Hello and welcome back to Business Class. Thank you so much to everyone that has joined me every week so far. I've loved reading all the kind messages that I've been sent in and so many people resonating with what I'm speaking about. So I thought today I could do a little bit of a different episode that's very fun, in my opinion. I'm very excited, and go into any of your business dilemmas that you've got, because we all know business is a very lonely and scary place. And there's been so many times where I've felt like I need to reach out to someone and ask for advice, and I've not known who to reach out to. Or sometimes you feel like, oh, I don't want to reach out to someone in case they judge me or they think I'm inexperienced. And a lot of the time it's just good to get a helping hand. So I've got some that are juicy. I've got some that are pretty tame. But just a lot of similar questions have come up. So I'm very excited to go into it. So as always, let's go into my takeoffs and departures. So takeoff was that Business Class actually got to number 1 in the charts, which is crazy. And the funny thing is, I wasn't even aware of this. I'm quite technically challenged. I'm not very good with tech, and I just don't understand it. So it was actually one of my friends who saw it and screenshotted it and sent it to me and was like, Vic, do you know you're number 1 in the charts? I was like, no. So absolutely crazy. Again, thank you so much for your support. Can't believe it. My departures this week, being totally honest, I just feel quite deflated, and I think a lot of that is down to social media. And without going into it too much, because I feel like those of you who know, social media is a very dark place at the minute, especially for founders that are sharing their story online. And I just feel like a lot of us are being targeted, and people don't like seeing people win. So there's been a lot of debate on the internet at the minute as to whether founders should be sharing their story while they grow on social media, because yes, it's great and you get exposure, but there's a lot of dark stuff that comes with it. There's a lot of opinions, and I know that when you post on social media, you open yourself up to opinions. That's like inevitable, but people are vicious, and it's really scared me this week and really shook me a little bit. And I've been quite unsure what to post and what to do with my social media. So yeah, I felt a little bit down and deflated with the world this week. I'm usually someone that likes to live in a little bubble. I don't really like to look at the state of the world, or if everything's quite negative on social media, I'm like, I don't want to know. But I've just not been able to not see it this week. So that's got me down a bit. So I feel like this episode's going to help me as well, just like helping other people and hopefully helping me out in some way in terms of like answering my own dilemmas. So yeah, we're going to jump on into it, and I'm going to pull up some of your business dilemmas. Let's get into it. So I have said that a lot of these can be anonymous, because the last thing you want is to be having your name read out on a podcast if you know that someone else is listening to it. So the first one we've got in today is from anonymous user, and she said, "Oh, hey girl, so I've got one for you. Briefly touched on it on your other account story, but thought I'd dive into it a bit deeper on here. So a friend of mine, pretty well known in the same industry, pitched to all of my clients. Here's me thinking she was just showing interest in my business, but little did she know she was trying to work out who I had as clients / send them quotes to and undercut me. Unfortunately for her, a lot of my clients are very loyal to me and put 2 and 2 together and told me to watch out, but orcs." Girl, I've actually been in this exact situation, and it scares me how sly some people are. So when I was going through this, what happened with me was that I had a client of mine that was like a long-term client that I'd had for a while, and I really enjoyed working with them. And out of the blue, they were just like, "Vic, we don't need your services anymore. We're deciding to go in a different direction, like bring it in-house." And it was a big shock, and I was disappointed, but I was also like, that's business. Like, I've sort of learned not to get too attached to people because they can just go tomorrow. So I was just like, yeah, no worries at all. That's fine. Literally within that same week, they were posting and it was very obvious that they had another person that was doing their social media. So I was disappointed. And just like to not like air dirty laundry, I won't go too much into it, but I did message the client and say like, you know, I'm a bit disappointed and blah, blah, blah. And they basically just said they were offered the same service, but at a cheaper price. And I found out that that same person had literally been doing the same thing, like going to my clients, poaching them, saying that they could do it cheaper. So I feel like the advice I would give you is to be very careful of who you trust. And I feel like you'll know this and be aware of this now. I'm very careful with who I trust now, especially in business, because unfortunately, some people do see you as like a ladder to getting what they want and seeing you as like a way to get what they want. So that's the hardest thing. And then also just having faith that you're the best at what you do. I went through a phase where I didn't want to share any of my work on social media because I was like, if I tag my clients, I know I'll get 50 other social media managers running over to them and saying, hey, we can do the same thing, but for cheaper. I've had friends that have had the same thing where people poach their clients. And I think you've really just got to know that you are the shit and you're the best at what you do. And if that client decides to go with someone else that is cheaper, they're not someone that you want as a client, because I know for a fact if I received an email, for example, and it could even be from a podcast person saying, I can do your podcast for cheaper, that looked really bad on them. That looked really unprofessional on them. And I'd instantly go, oh, no, I don't want to work with you. So it's really hard. I've been there a couple of times. It really gets to you. It really annoys you. But you just have to know that you need to be confident in what you do. And the clients, if they are true clients, they will stay with you. But it's really hard. And in terms of like how I would maybe go about the conversation with the friend, that's a difficult one. There's almost those times where you think the conversation's not needed. I'm just going to slowly distance myself from you. I've had to do that a lot of times where people might be thinking, oh, I wonder why Vicky's not spoken to me recently. And I've actually distanced myself because sometimes that conversation isn't even worth happening. So best of luck to you. So second dilemma here that we've got is how to deal with people copying. There have been a few people copying our brand, but one in particular that saw the success we are having and they copy everything. Products, patterns, TikToks, use our TikToks as scripts, product names, and even poach out our brand ambassadors. Oh, and then undercuts us by £5 and says on their website their product is cheaper and better quality than ours. They then even had the audacity to message us to tell our followers to stop commenting on their videos saying that they copied us. I never told them to do that. They just noticed how similar everything was. Oh my God. It's just frustrating when another female-owned small business doesn't care about the work you put in. It's made me question everything I post and say about my brand and not to share anything too soon because people will copy, which I think is part of the reason we have lost our community feel. Because I used to take everyone along on the journey and show the process. How do you deal with that? Because everyone says copying is the best form of flattery, but in reality, it's just frustrating and sad. So true. I can't stand it when people say copying is the biggest form of flattery, because I can't even tell you how many times I've been copied word for word. I remember the freakiest thing I saw was a TikTok that I did, and this girl made the exact same TikTok following what I said word for word, and it was weird to watch. So I think sort of similar to the advice I've just given the first dilemma, which I feel like isn't really what you want to hear when you're going through this, is eventually stuff like this does come out. And the thing is, especially in like my industry and social media, everyone copies each other. Like someone can say, this is what you do to go viral on social media, and 10 other people will copy it without actually trying it themselves first. The way that I've tried to reshape my mindset around things like this, because I used to be one of those people where I would message if I was copied, and I'd never go about it in a, like a confrontational way. But I'd always just say, like, I put a lot of work into this. I'd really just appreciate some credit, but usually you end up getting blocked and it's not worth it anyway. It's just being really strong in business with knowing your ethics and your morals. And I just feel like whenever someone is copying you, they will never, ever, ever be as good as the original. And eventually things have a funny way of working themselves out. A lot of the time in business, there is times where your like mindset is really tested. And there's times where you'll be like, do you know what? I really just want to pop off at this person today. But I would always just say, especially whenever I'm dealing with maybe like a client interaction or a social media interaction, always think about how important reputation is. Because say, for example, if it was someone was to ever like screenshot your conversation and blast you all over their stories, you want to be proud of what you've said and how you've handled it and how you've held your head high. That's really hard to say. So yeah, I think it might be worth messaging this person once. I'm guessing you have already messaged them. It sounds like you have, and you haven't gotten anywhere. It's just raising your head above and knowing that you will end up being the best. Like the copy is never as good as the original. It's just frustrating, and everyone goes through it. Literally everyone I know has been through it. And those people that copy never end up as successful as you are. Next one we've got is tips on how to stay professional when some customers are just being horrendous. I always end up giving in because I just want them out of my life. This is just, I mean, I've been through this so many times, and people don't understand that business owners are all people. Like, we're real people. We have real feelings and real emotions. And I think when you spent money with someone, it's really easy to get angry and frustrated without actually speaking first. So tips that I would give on this when I've had clients who are being rude or patronizing, whatever that may be, is to first always try and get them on a call, because a lot of people are keyboard warriors. And I think as well, you don't want to get back and forth with them on email, because things can be misconstrued, like things can be read in the wrong way, taken in the wrong way. If you get on a call, it's a lot easier to sort of hash it out. And I think as hard as it is when stuff like this happens, try to understand why this person is reacting that way. Sometimes you can't, and sometimes they are just being a bit of an arse, and like people are, that's just what's going to happen. But I always just try and think, like, why are they getting frustrated? And a lot of the time it's just because their expectations haven't been met or the communication's not been there. But it's the hardest thing that I found is like learning when to let things go. I've dealt with so many people where we go back and forth for ages, and then you just have to go, do you know what? Like, let's just part ways and move on, because it's taking up your energy. And I think when you've got a business and you're so busy, you just need to be thinking, is it making me money or is it adding to my energy? If it's not, then it's not worth wasting my energy on. It's so hard to do. And you always want to have the last word. You always want to fight back and fight your corner. But sometimes it's just pointless because you're not going to get anywhere. And that's the hardest thing. So I would just say communication, trying to get on calls is key. It feels so hard. But I always just think speaking from person to person, just removing the whole business side from it and all the language we use on emails. You know, when you just like someone writes you an email and you're like, babe, you've used ChatGPT to write that. We just need to get on and be human beings. Okay, let me have a look through what we've got on here. So I had one about having to deal with a business coach that stole my business idea. And wow, I mean, having to deal with stuff like that when you are completely blindsided is hard. And a lot of the dilemmas that I've got, it's one of those where in the heat of the moment, it feels awful. And I've had so many instances like this where you feel so blindsided, you feel so betrayed. And I always, like a year later, look back and think, I'm actually really glad that that didn't work out. And it's so hard to see it when you are in that moment. But as best as you can, try and communicate. And a lot of people, though, will just be like, block, delete, like, I'm not speaking to you about it. As best as you can, communicate with people. I would always resort from posting about people on social media. I personally have never understood why people do that. I don't get it. Maybe it's because I'm not a confrontational person, but I find it very strange when people go on social media and blast someone. I get it. Like, and I think maybe there's a time and a place for it. Maybe if you've tried all other options, but you just got to think of perception in business. And I always think it does look unprofessional when a brand or a business owner is going on and slating another brand or a business owner, or when they're getting, too emotional on their business page. I think that is not the way to go, because that's going to put other clients and customers off. It's so hard to hold your head high, and sometimes you don't want to hold your head high and you want to feel annoyed and feel angry. And I've been trying to let myself feel things at the minute, because I think sometimes we're just told, like, you need to always be professional and you always need to, the customer's always right. And sometimes you just want to snap and just be like, no, I'm angry. So it's okay to be angry, but just not letting that, like, I always just think whenever something like this happens, to never respond in the heat of the moment. I've done that so many times where I've like replied to an email or a message, and then I look back and think, oh my God, why did I say that? It is just better to just let yourself think about what is the right solution here. And again, always just think about, if someone was to screenshot your messages and put it on their story, would you be proud of what you've said? Okay, next one is knowing when to delegate. I know what's working, but I don't want them to mess it up. I have been in this exact position when you go from being someone working by yourself to someone with a team of 2 or 3 or 4, and delegation feels so scary. And I was a bit the same, like a bit of a control freak. Like, if something goes wrong, it feels like the world is ending. I would say, looking back now, what I would do differently is put more time aside to go over the basics and not assuming that people know everything. Because when I had team members join me, especially when you do like have to hire someone, it's usually because you're really busy and it happens quite fast and you're like, oh my God, I wasn't expecting this. I would have people join and I'd just sort of be like, okay, this is what you do. And they just had to get started and it felt very rushed. So I think now I would carve out a good day to go through everything. Even the things you think are so basic need addressing, so that when things go wrong, it's like, we spoke about this, instead of, oh my God, I have not told you about that. And making sure that they feel comfortable to ask you things. And I think as well, when you are looking to hire your first employee or freelancer, try not to just hire someone because you think you'll get on with them or because you think they'll be a good friend, because I got a lot of questions about hiring and how to know who to hire. And the worst mistake I did when I was first hiring was, yes, I looked at, CVs and portfolios, experience, but I was ultimately thinking, like, if this person's here, I'm going to have to be with them every single day. Am I going to get on with them? Am I going to have things in common with them? And that is not the way to go, because when you do end up getting too close to people, that's when you'll have to have more of the awkward conversations. So finding someone that you feel comfortable to manage is key, not someone that you're going to be like, she's my friend, she's my girl, and it feels awkward and uncomfortable to give her guidance. Like, finding people where it's like you do feel comfortable to lay down the law sometimes or have difficult conversations is massively important. So I got one from a brand who said how to reply no to copy and paste messages from people asking for free products or gifting. I have loads of friends that have product-based businesses that always say people are always asking for a freebie. I think sometimes the best thing to do can just be to ignore, or sometimes it can be to say you're not doing free gifting at the minute. But also thinking about, like, can you actually utilize these people? Because I think a lot of brands really overlook how huge things like gifting in exchange for content can be. But I do know as well that a lot of people have done gifting and then they won't get the content in return. So if you can write a contract up to make sure that if you are gifting to them, they're providing you with some content. So don't always feel like you have to reply to everyone, because there's some messages I get where I'm like, oh, I don't really know what the best thing to say to this is. And it's just like, again, is it adding to my energy? Is it making me money? No. You can just ignore it. And especially if they're copy and paste, they don't really care about your brand. They just want free stuff. Okay. How to get large companies to actually sign contracts and pay invoices on time. I feel this. So with large companies, they do make it seem like, they're so busy and they're so important, and you're just this little freelancer that isn't their top priority. But I actually think that having really strong boundaries in place, where you're saying, if I don't get paid by this date, I'm not doing it, is really important, and it makes them respect you as well. And it does just make you seem so much more elevated and in demand than just being like, yeah, like whenever you guys want to pay me, that's fine. Because we've had a lot of experiences with bigger brands where they really like elongate the payment process, and I shouldn't have gone along with it. I just did because I was like, oh my God, they're this huge household name brand. Like, that's just such an honor that they've chosen to work with me. So I would just have your boundaries in place and your like rules in place before you go into the partnership, and just say like, I need payment up front, I need contract signed by this date, otherwise unfortunately I won't be able to take on this project. Because I have also found with big companies, they always say like, we don't do payments up front, or we have a 60-day payment turnaround sort of thing. If that works for you and it's written up and you know that you're eventually going to get payment, then that's fine. But I've learned from a lot of people who have worked with bigger brands that a lot of the time brands just say this, and if they really need to pay you on that day, they can just pay you and they'll make it work. Like if they want you bad enough, they'll make it work. Okay, on to the next dilemma. I will be honest, in between takes, I have had a McDonald's break. So this is why, if you're watching, I have a little McDonald's fresh Diet Coke on the side, because a girl's got to eat and I've got a full day of filming today. So let's get back into it. Okay, so next dilemma we've got is tips on speaking to people in business, or like speaking to other freelancers and being taken seriously as a woman. I could do a whole podcast episode on how I strongly believe and know from personal experience that as women, you get treated differently in business. It is a fact. And I think sadly, I've always thought that I only got treated differently because I was a young woman in business. But I think just women in general get treated so badly in business. And prime example of this, sorry to go off on a tangent, I remember when I went out for a meal with a business mentor friend of mine at the time, and we were going out, like obviously speaking about business. We were having a sort of like meal together, going over a plan for like what I was going to do with my business that year. And there were these two men that were very much like, we call them like finance bros, like the ones that are very shouty and, just like icky men in business vibes. They were sat a few tables down from us, and they were like having a break with their conversations. They're like on their phones, and me and my business mentor were like having a chat and like going over everything. So they could obviously hear everything that we were saying because they were sat a few tables down from us. And when we were speaking, one of the guys started laughing. So I like looked at him to be like, is he laughing at me? Is he laughing at his phone or his friend? I tried to make it not too obvious, but he was laughing. And then I heard him say to his friend, I just can't take women in business seriously. And I was like, wow, like how would we still live in this time? And I get it all the time. Like men, not all men, I love some men just treat women so differently in business. It's like we don't know as much, we're inexperienced, we don't have a brain, we can't be taken seriously. Like, it's just so sad. So back to the question, being taken seriously as a woman, you've just got to be really solid in your beliefs and values, and knowing and owning your shit, and knowing that you're the best at what you do, because it's really hard when you're going through maybe a difficult month or a difficult week and you question how good you are at your job. Like, we've all had times like that before where we're like, is what I'm offering right now the best? Sometimes it's just not, and you're just not doing your best. Sometimes you think, yes, it's amazing and I'm really proud of it. Men, I think, or anyone, that's treating women differently can sense that you aren't a strong presence. And it's almost like you do have to channel like your inner Sasha Fierce, like Beyonce's alter ego, Sasha Fierce. It's like you need your other version of that. Men sometimes want a reaction, so they want you to, fight back at them. But I find now that it's just really standing in your power, believing that you are the best at what you do. And when you have that sort of unshakable energy and force, I don't think it makes you get treated any differently. I just think it's easier for you to be like, to brush it off. Because when you are at a moment where you're really vulnerable and tired, or like I said, you're having a bad week and someone makes a comment, it literally makes you just want to strangle them. Like, it is, oh my God, it happens every day. I get it every day. But now I am just so in my power that I'm like, I'm really good at what I do. Like, I can speak about how good we are about what we do. And if someone doesn't want a slice of that cake, I don't want to work with you. And I think that's really good to why we have like discovery calls and stuff. Because if I even sense that vibe off someone, I'm like, gotta go. Absolutely not. I've got a lot of questions on dealing with imposter syndrome. And I think imposter syndrome is a difficult one. It's definitely been the word gets thrown around a lot in business. And I think everyone's like, oh, I've got imposter syndrome. But when you really dive deep into what imposter syndrome is, it's basically the feeling of you're doing something, but you don't really feel like you're supposed to be there. So a lot of it does come back to self-belief and maybe feeling like you're not deserving of something. So I have different times where imposter syndrome comes up, but I wouldn't say I deal with it a lot because I have always been someone that has known that I was going to be successful. I've always had a feeling that I wanted to do well. And I know that some people read that as me being big-headed or cocky. It's not the case. I've just always had a lot of ambition. So when I find myself, for example, launching this podcast or speaking on stages, I feel deserving to be there because I've worked hard for it. And it's like almost like I knew I was going to be here. So a lot of it does come back to, like self-belief and be like, oh, I shouldn't be in this room. Like, yes, you should. You've worked so hard to be in that room. You've worked so hard to be in this position. And imposter syndrome is only really going to hold you back and make you feel like you don't deserve to be there. So I'd say the best advice to deal with imposter syndrome is just reflection and, understanding why you're in this position and feeling grateful that you're in this position. I wouldn't say I've dealt with it where I've like been, have like crippling imposter syndrome, because I do think that is a lot deeper rooted and there's a reason why you feel that so much that a lot of people don't really speak about. So I hope that helps. I feel like it maybe wasn't the best answer. Okay. Next one we got is, how do I balance clients who want a lot for a smaller price? One of the best pieces of advice that I ever got was, do you want it cheap, fast, or good? Because you can't have all three. If you want it good, it won't be cheap or fast. If you want it cheap, it won't be, hold on a sec, it's like a maths equation, this. If you want it cheap, it'll be done fast, but it won't be good. You understand what I'm trying to say. It's like this equation where if you get one, you can't have the others. So you can't give a lot to a client who has a smaller price point. If someone is rushing you on how to do something, it won't be, it'll be done fast, but it won't be good. You know what I'm trying to say? I feel like I'm doing a riddle right now, but it really made me think because a lot of people do want things. We get clients all the time where they're like, great, we're really excited to go ahead with you guys. We need to start posting by Monday. And it's like Thursday. And I'm like, no, honey, no. Like, that is just not going to work. And it's just setting expectations from the start. So to answer the question, if I do get a client who maybe is really desperate to work with us, but they say, I don't really have the budget right now, we won't try and fit into their mold and just make something work for the sake of it. We'll just turn around the expectations. So we'll just say like, totally appreciate that's your budget. Like, this is the only thing we can do within your budget that will, give you great results so that you'll be happy with. Because if we were to do a lot for not a lot of money, the work wouldn't be good. Like, it wouldn't be good quality because we'd be rushing it to get it done and fit it into like a certain amount of hours. And I think if you're service based, you can really play around with hours. Like, we often say to clients like that they've got a allocated amount of hours and that price that they're paying only covers those hours. So we actually can't go above those hours, just to help them understand it a little bit more. I got a dilemma on having friends in business, basically like how to have friends in business and not make it feel competitive. Everyone I feel like who's in business has felt this. I've had a lot of friendships where I would say not that it feels competitive, but it feels like they aren't happy for you or they're not celebrating with you, but it feels one-sided, like you want them to grow but they don't want you to grow. And it's like the evil eye, like people are watching you and waiting for you to stumble and trip up. I think when you're starting a business, it's really hard to transition from having your like normal friends that are outside of your business and then having business friends. And I just think now you sort of know in your gut who is a good friend. Like, I always say to myself, if I feel like the rule of thumb for friends that not a lot of people speak about is if you truly wholeheartedly believe that this friend would speak about you positively and sing your praises to a crowded room or to people when you're not there, they are a good friend. But if you have any inkling in your body that this friend would not speak well about you behind your back, just keep them at arm's length. And it's really easy to have friends at arm's length. Like, I've got a lot of people that, I hold at a certain distance. Sometimes not for any reason. Sometimes it's just like you're full and you don't really have capacity like in your schedule. Like, I don't really have a lot of time for socializing. So it'll just be people that you have at arm's length who you maybe don't tell things to or you don't get that deep with. But don't be afraid to not have any friends is the best advice I'd give, because no one gives you that advice, because everyone goes on about how important it is to have friends. But I will always believe that it's better to have no friends than to have friends that make you feel miserable and that you don't feel like would speak and sing your praises when you're not there. Next one is, how do I balance building my business while still working full time? I'm really struggling to get content out and build. So I think what I would say, if you are still working part-time while you're running the business, sounds a little bit weird, but I would actually lean into that and post about it, because I know a lot of people that online, it seems like their business is their full-time job, but part-time, they are still working somewhere else or doing shifts somewhere else. And we've been made to feel like it's embarrassing to do that and that you shouldn't have a part-time job while you run your business. But I think you can really lean into that and do a series on how you're trying to leave your part-time job to do your business full-time, and what does your day look like? Like, I'm even curious what your day would look like. Like, it would feel, chaotic, and you're working on your job and then in the evenings you're doing your business. So I think play into that, and it doesn't make you look unprofessional or less than, or, not as big as maybe you want to come across online. But I think honesty always comes across well. Got a lot of questions on content, like social media content, getting views. I did an episode on this all about how to grow on social media. So it was a few episodes back. So I definitely recommend that. And then things just like getting more people onto your website. And again, like, watch the episode for me to go a bit further into depth. But getting and creating value content and just creating awareness, brand awareness, is so much better than hard selling to people. So I would make sure that you are not constantly talking about like your product. The next dilemma I got was what to do when you're not loving the clients that you're working with, but you need the money. And this is like one of the hardest parts when you're starting a business, is that you need the money. I'm going to have a sip of my fresh McDonald's Diet Coke. Yum. That is crisp. So when you're starting a business, cash is obviously the most important thing, especially when you have pressures on you. Like, I feel like when I first started my business, there wasn't a massive amount of pressure on me because I was obviously mentally unwell and, at home. And I was really lucky because I lived at home. I didn't have bills to pay. So for me, it was just like, I just wanted to make some money. But I know that some people start their business and they've just quit their job. So they need to replace that income. So I would say part of the start of your business, unfortunately, is working with people that you're not going to enjoy working with. And business is very glamorized online. Like, it's like when you start a business, you work with people that you love, you make loads of money, you travel, you're doing what you love every single day. But actually, going back to one of my first episodes, that statistic where it says 70% of businesses fail in the first 3 years, that's why, is because they give up when they're in the trenches. And the first few years of your business is going to be the hardest. And there's not even like a magic spell or fix that I can give to you that's going to make you be like, yes, that is so true, I'm going to implement that. I think that's the most pivotal point in your business, is working with people that you don't enjoy working with because you need the money. And then when you build up on the money and the cash and you get more experience, that's when you can then turn people down that are being rude or that you don't enjoy working with. So part of it is that's just life and we have to do these things. I learned some of my best lessons from my hardest clients and my hardest customers. So I feel like that's probably not advice you wanted to hear, but I think it really toughens you up. And obviously, if you get to a position where you're like, right, this person, I've been there, even at the start, where I've literally been sacrificing my mental health and my happiness in exchange for like a couple £100. And I would say, if you can, just determine how crucial it is that you keep them, and just seeing if there's any way you can go about replacing that client or customer. Like, can you be doing outreach so that, if you get rid of them, you can replace them? Because as much as I say all this, obviously you don't want to burn yourself out. And it's finding that balance when you're at the start of your business journey between, I need to keep these people on board because I need money, but I don't want to resent the job and become burnt out. Right, so we'll finish off with the last question. How do you know when the right time is to scale and to make your business bigger, go into that next step? I feel like a lot of people now, like, business is very glamorized at the minute. And I think that's partially because of sort of like what I was speaking about in the start of the episode, like the founder content and people doing like day in my life as a CEO and stuff like that. Like, it's very glamorized and people feel like they need to have a team or to be bigger and have an office because it looks good. But I want to tell you now that your business should be more about what feels good than what looks good. And the same for life in general. Because yes, a lot of people think that my business and my life looks good because I've got like my big team and my office and I'm busy, but does it feel good? Not all the time. It's very stressful. And there are days where I think I would actually rather be a one-man band and just work by myself and be a freelancer. But you only know that when you get to that point. So I think it's just really thinking about, why do you want to scale? Like, do you want to scale just because it looks good and people be like, wow, she's doing great? Or is it because you actually are like, do you know what? I'm actually really busy. I need to scale. I need to get a team. So it's just thinking about what you want, and that will change over time. Like, when I was starting up, I always thought I wanted a team of like 100 or 200 and have these like massive offices. And now that I'm at this point, I'm like, I don't think I want that anymore, because team is the hardest part of having a business. So, and you can experiment a bit with it. Like, I think there's a lot of pressure when it comes to scaling and hiring your first few team members, that you need to hire like a full-time employee and it needs to be really serious and it feels scary. But I think just starting out with like a freelancer, doing a couple of hours a week and seeing how that helps. Or you can even hire like a virtual assistant or like an operations person. Just like step into your business a couple hours a week and you can just pay them like on a retainer. Because yeah, I just fear at the minute that people want a team and want people because it looks like you're doing well. Whereas there's so many people I know that are like multi-millionaires that are a team of one or a team of three. Like your having a team doesn't represent how successful you are, if that makes sense. So I'm going to round it up a little bit. Let me know if you enjoyed this episode and I can definitely do more of them. I do think that when you start out, there just is no one to ask these questions to. And even now, I'm like, there's certain things that come up and I'm like, I don't know who to ask, because if I maybe ask certain people, they might think, you know, you should know that. Like I've definitely felt judgment a lot of times when I've asked really simple questions and I felt judged for it because I'm like, how do you not know that? And it's like, how are we supposed to know? Where do we learn this stuff? Where does it come from? There's no way that we're supposed to know this. We don't get taught it. So having these conversations to me are really, really important. And even just small things like mindset, and there's stuff that you can't speak to your family and friends about sometimes because they don't get it. So let me know if you want me to do another one of these episodes, or maybe I can do like a little one every week, like a little question at the end of every episode each week, which might be quite cute. So yeah, that's all from me today. I hope you have a tremendous Monday if you're listening to this on a Monday, whatever you're doing. I love to know what you're doing while you're listening, so please do let me know. Are you driving? Am I in your car radio? Am I in your ears? Are you cleaning? Are you biking, swimming? Like, what are you doing? Walking the dog? And that's all from me. I'll see you next episode in Business Class.